Darius Webb was 41 years old, a structural engineer who built things meant to last: bridges, overpasses, foundations strong enough to hold weight that would crush lesser materials. He thought his marriage was one of those things. For 12 years he came home, provided, showed up, and said nothing about the slow, deliberate way his wife had learned to look through him instead of at him. Then one Tuesday evening, he sat down on his own couch and found a restaurant receipt tucked between the cushions. A dinner for two, on a night she was supposed to be in Annapolis. What Darius uncovered over the next 14 days, the affair, the hidden accounts, the 14 months of financial planning she had quietly executed behind his back, would have broken a lesser man. Instead, he made one quiet, precise decision. He filed for divorce first. When the papers were served, his wife picked them up, signed them without reading past the first page, laughed, and told him he had just done her a favor. She walked out that door completely certain she had won. She had no idea that 5 days later, an estate attorney would knock on that same door with documents confirming that Darius was the sole heir to a $512 million fortune, and that the date on those papers she signed so carelessly had placed every single dollar permanently beyond her reach. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The porch light was off again. Darius noticed it before he even pulled into the driveway, that small, dark rectangle above the front door where the light should have been burning. He had changed that bulb twice in the last 4 months. Both times Adrienne had said she would add it to the grocery list. Both times she had not. He sat in the car for a moment after he cut the engine. Not from exhaustion, though he had plenty of that. 12 hours on a bridge rehabilitation site in the October cold had settled into his joints the way cold always did. Slowly, deeply, like something deciding to stay. He sat because he had learned, over the years, to give himself that moment before he walked in. A few seconds to set everything down, to arrive clean. He got out and went inside. The house smelled like the vanilla candle Adrienne kept on the entryway table, the expensive one she ordered online, the one she replaced without discussion every time it burned low. The living room was immaculate, throw pillows arranged just so. The coffee table books stacked in a neat diagonal. A room that looked, as it always did, less like a place where someone lived, and more like a photograph of a place where someone might. Adrienne was standing near the kitchen doorway, already in her coat, a deep burgundy wrap that Darius recognized as new. Her purse was on her shoulder. Her keys were in her hand. She looked up when he came in. Her smile was quick and practiced. "Hey," she said. "I was wondering when you'd get back." "Traffic on 270, he said. He set his bag near the stairs. "I'm heading out. Drinks with Simone from my yoga class. She's been going through it lately, so." She lifted one shoulder in a small shrug that managed to convey both sympathy for Simone and mild inconvenience at having to offer it. "I won't be late." Darius nodded once. He looked toward the kitchen. The stove was off. The counter was clean. Nothing waiting. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge," Adrienne said, already moving toward the door. "From Monday. It should still be fine." She paused, with her hand on the doorknob. Not long. Barely a beat. The pause of a woman who knew she should ask something and was calculating whether it was necessary. She decided it wasn't. "Don't wait up," she said, and then she was gone. The door closed. Her car started in the driveway. Then the sound of it faded down the street, and the house settled back into its particular, curated silence. Darius stood in the entryway for a moment. His coat was still on. He ate alone at the kitchen counter, the way he did most nights now. The pasta was fine. He'd made it himself on Monday, so he already knew it would be. He heated it in the pan instead of the microwave because he had standards about certain things, small things, the kinds of things that don't matter to anyone else and matter entirely to you. He'd learned a long time ago which bathroom was still his in this house. The one off the hallway. The smaller one, with the older fixtures and the shelf he'd never gotten around to replacing. Adrienne had claimed the master bath so completely and so gradually that he couldn't have said exactly when it happened. Her products occupied every surface, her towels on every hook. A little fortress of lotions and serums and tools he didn't know the names of, arranged with the precision of a display. He hadn't minded at first. He had learned not to mind a lot of things. That was the architecture of their marriage. His accommodations stacked quietly over years, load-bearing walls that no one acknowledged were walls. He thought about the vacation they'd taken in July. Cabo. Adrienne had researched it, planned it, booked it. She had shown him the resort with the enthusiasm of a woman presenting a gift she'd already decided on. He had smiled at the right moments. He did not particularly like beaches. He had never said so. At dinner parties with other couples, the rotating cast of Adrienne's friends and their husbands, she would gesture at him while telling a story, the way you gesture at furniture that confirms a point. She never did it cruelly. That was the precise and particular thing about it. She did it the way someone does when the thought that another person might have something valuable to add simply does not occur to them. He ate. He rinsed the dish. He dried it and placed it back in the cabinet. He was about to move toward the living room when he sat down on the couch and felt, immediately, something beneath the cushion. He reached down. A receipt. Paper folded. Small. The kind that prints long and narrow from a card reader. He opened it. Maison Vert, Georgetown, D.C. The date at the top was a Friday, 3 weeks ago. The same Friday, Adrienne had driven to Annapolis for her cousin's bachelorette weekend. He remembered because he had helped her carry her overnight bag to the car. 2 glasses, Pinot Noir, same label, both of them, an entree for 2. A single dessert, the chocolate soufflé, $18, shared. Darius read the receipt once. Then he read it again. He set it on the counter. He finished what was left of his water. He washed the glass. Then he picked the receipt back up, laid it flat under the kitchen light, and took a photograph with his phone. Unhurried. Clear. He checked the image once to make sure the date and the line items were legible. They were. He opened his laptop at the kitchen table. He created a new folder. He typed the name. Documentation. He saved the photograph to it. He closed the laptop. His face was quiet. His hands were steady. He had been an engineer long enough to know that a structure doesn't fail all at once. It gives you signals first. Small things, easy to miss if you aren't paying attention. Hairline fractures, micro shifts in the load. He had been paying attention. The evidence had started arriving. He would be ready when the rest of it came. He was at his desk by 7:15. The site plans for the Route 29 drainage project were spread across his drafting table. 3 large sheets, annotated in red pen from the previous week's inspection. He stood over them with his coffee and worked through the markings methodically, noting which corrections had been addressed and which were still open. His supervisor passed by around 8 and said good morning. Darius said it back. A colleague stopped in around 9 with a question about load tolerances on the Greenbelt overpass file. Darius pulled the reference sheet and walked him through it. Nobody knew anything was different. Nobody would have guessed. That was the thing about being the steady one. People stopped checking on you. They filed you under fine and moved on. Darius had been filed under fine for so long that he had learned to use it. Stillness as cover. Composure as strategy. He ate lunch at his desk. A sandwich from the place on Bonifant Street, the same order he'd been making for 3 years. He read through a procurement memo while he ate. He did not think about the receipt. He thought about the receipt constantly. That evening, Adrienne was at a board meeting for the nonprofit she sat on. She had told him Sunday, he had nodded, and he had the house to himself. He opened his laptop. He opened the documentation folder. And then, for the first time, he began writing down everything he had not said. He worked through it the way he would work through a site assessment report. Chronologically, precisely, no editorializing. 8 months ago, Adrienne began locking her phone. Not just a screen timeout, a full passcode she entered with her body turned slightly away from him. He had noticed the first time and said nothing. He had noticed every time since. 6 months ago. A piece of mail arrived addressed to Adrienne. A loyalty account statement from a hotel brand. One of the boutique chains. The kind that markets to people who care about the design of the soap dish. 3 stays listed. Dates he could account for nothing on. He had set the envelope on her pile of mail without opening it. He had noted the return address. He had looked up the hotel brand that evening and spent 4 minutes thinking before he closed his laptop and went to bed. 11 weeks ago. The phone call. He had been heading to the master bathroom to ask Adrienne something. He couldn't even remember now what it was. Something minor, something domestic, and heard her voice through the door. Not the shape of words, just the register. Soft and low, and underneath it a small sound that he had not heard from her in years. A laugh. Private and unguarded. The kind of laugh a person doesn't perform. The bathroom door was cracked 2 inches. He stood there for exactly 1 moment, then turned around and walked back to the living room and turned on the television and sat with the volume at a reasonable level and did not think about it. He had written it down now. He had thought about it now. He looked at the list when he was done. 7 items, 7 moments, spread over 8 months, that he had absorbed without reacting, filed and stored with the careful habit of a man trained to read structural conditions before they became structural failures. He picked up his phone and called Jerome. Jerome answered on the second ring. In the background, Darius could hear a game on low. "You eat yet?" Jerome said by way of greeting. "I'm good," Darius said. "Got a minute?" Something shifted in Jerome's voice. Nothing dramatic, just a slight recalibration, the way it did when he understood the register had changed. "Yeah," he said. "Hold on." The background noise disappeared. A door closing, Darius told him. Not all of it, not with full detail, but enough. The phone, the hotel statement, the receipt. Jerome listened without interrupting. That was the thing about Jerome. Former Army, 12 years of project management. He understood that information needed room to land before it could be assessed. When Darius finished, there was a short silence. "You say anything to her?" Jerome asked. "No." "Good." There was no hesitation in it. "Don't. Not yet. Not until you know exactly what you're dealing with. Emotions make noise, and noise tips people off. Right now, you've got instinct and a receipt. That's not enough to move on." A pause. "You need the full picture before you do anything. All of it." Darius nodded to himself. It was what he already knew. Hearing it from someone he trusted made the path clearer. "I was thinking about Carol Prentice," Darius said. "HR gave me her name last year for that contractor situation that never went anywhere. She's licensed. Discreet. Call her," Jerome said. There was nothing dramatic about it. Just call her. He met with Carol Prentice 2 days later, in a nondescript office building in Rockville, on his lunch break. She was compact and direct, with the particular stillness of someone who had spent a career watching people without being seen. She listened to what he had. She asked precise questions. She named a rate. He paid the retainer in cash, drawn from a savings account he had maintained quietly for years, separate, in his name only, a habit from before the marriage that he had simply never stopped. He handed her the documentation folder. 2 weeks, he said. 2 weeks, she confirmed. He was home before Adrienne that evening. He changed out of his work clothes. He started dinner, actually started it, from scratch, because it gave his hands something to do. When Adrienne came in around 7, she seemed pleased, or performed pleased, which he had stopped being able to tell apart. She sat at the kitchen table and told him about her day. A difficult client, a presentation that landed well, something funny a coworker had said. He listened. He nodded at the right moments. He watched her face the way he watched a bridge bearing the weight of something it didn't know was being tested. He said nothing. Prentice called on a Tuesday. No preamble, just a time and an address, and I have everything. Darius had been in the middle of reviewing rebar specifications for the Route 29 project. He finished the page he was on before he wrote down the time. He set the notepad beside his keyboard and went back to the specifications. He ate lunch early that day. The office was the same as before. Nondescript building, second floor, the kind of space that advertised nothing about itself. Prentice was already at her desk when he came in. A manila folder sat in front of her, thick and closed. She did not open with pleasantries. She slid the folder across the desk and let him open it himself. He did. The first page was a cover sheet, typed, clean, a name at the top. Porter Langley, age 45, real estate developer. Principal, Langley Property Group, LLC. Registered offices, McLean, Virginia. A headshot below it. Porter Langley was the kind of man who photographed well. Square jaw, expensive haircut, the easy confidence of someone who had learned early that rooms tended to arrange themselves around him. Darius looked at the photograph for a moment. Then he turned the page. What followed was 22 months of someone else's life with his wife, assembled in careful chronological order. Hotel records first. 8 stays across 4 different properties, 2 in the district, 1 in Annapolis, 2 in Northern Virginia, 1 in Philadelphia, 2 more in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where Adrian had attended a marketing conference last March, and told Darius the hotel the company booked was lovely. Prentice had pulled the loyalty account Darius had seen listed in that piece of mail, and the records it contained were thorough. Check-in dates and check-out dates. Room type. 1 name on the booking, but the stays tracked against Adrian's stated whereabouts with an accuracy that left no room for coincidence. Restaurant receipts next. 18 months of them, cross-referenced with dates and location. Some were places Darius recognized by name. He passed a few of them on his commute. Others were new. One was the restaurant on the receipt he had found between the couch cushions. There it was in the middle of the stack, a photocopy of the original, and seeing it again, seeing it in this context, placed among 17 others just like it, made something in his chest compress slightly before he controlled it. He kept turning pages. The parking garage photographs were next. Prentice had placed them in plastic sleeves. Clear, well-lit shots from what appeared to be 2 different garages, taken on different days. Adrian getting into a passenger seat. The driver visible through the windshield. Porter Langley, the same square jaw, the same easy posture. Another shot of them walking together through a garage elevator lobby, her shoulder close to his. Another of them standing beside a car, and the particular angle of their bodies said everything without anything being explicit. Darius turned through each photograph at the same measured pace. He set each one down. He moved to the next. Then he reached the last one. Prentice had placed it at the very bottom. He understood, looking at it, why. It was a Sunday morning somewhere. Farmer's market, from the look of it. Tables of produce, people with canvas bags, morning light coming in soft and flat. Porter Langley was in a light jacket, gesturing at something off-frame, and Adrienne was beside him with her hand in his, turned toward him mid-laugh, her whole face open in a way that Darius had not seen in a long time. Not performing ease, having it, looking completely, naturally, comfortably at home beside a man who was not her husband. They looked like a couple. They looked like 2 people who had built something together and were enjoying a quiet morning inside of it. Darius looked at that photograph for a long time, longer than than he had looked at anything else in the folder. The office was quiet. Prentice did not speak. He was not crying. He was not going to cry. But there was something in the looking, something compressed and heavy, that settled into a place below his ribs and simply stayed there. He let it. He didn't push it away. He just looked at the photograph until he had looked at it enough. Then he closed the folder. He placed it squarely on the edge of the desk. "Thank you," he said. His voice was even. "I can send you the digital copies," Prentice said. "Encrypted." "Please." He stood. He picked up the folder. "I'll be in touch if I need anything further." He was back at his desk by 1:15. He signed off on the rebar specifications. He replied to a contractor's email about the Greenbelt timeline. A colleague stopped by at 2:30 to ask him a question about drainage load calculations, and Darius walked him through the answer on a scratch pad. Took 3 minutes. Sent the man on his way. At 4 o'clock, he closed his office door, pulled out his personal phone, and searched for a number. He had heard the name once, from the HR attorney who had referred him to Prentice. "If it ever gets more complicated than you want to handle alone, call Paulette Rivers." He had filed the name away at the time without knowing why. He called. A receptionist answered. He gave his name and said he needed a morning appointment. "Earliest available." "Tomorrow at 8:30, she said. "I'll take it," Darius said. He put his phone away. He finished the afternoon. Adrian was making tea when he got home. She was in her robe, her hair pulled back, standing at the counter with her back to him when he came through the door. She looked relaxed, unhurried. The kitchen smelled like the lavender blend she liked. She glanced over her shoulder and smiled. "How was your day?" "Fine," he said. She turned back to her mug. She told him about a call she'd had with a vendor who kept missing deadlines. He listened. He said the right things at the right moments. He set his bag down and loosened his tie and moved through the kitchen like a man who had come home on a normal evening. He had an appointment in the morning. Paulette Rivers's office was on the 9th floor of a building in Bethesda, and it looked exactly like what it was, the office of a woman who had been winning difficult cases for 30 years and had stopped needing to impress anyone about it. No framed magazine covers, no wall of plaques, just clean surfaces, full bookshelves, and a desk that was organized the way a surgical tray is organized. Everything in its place. Everything with a purpose. She was already reading when Darius sat down. He had slid the documentation folder across her desk the moment she gestured for it, and she had opened it without ceremony and begun working through it the way a doctor works through a chart. Focused, unhurried, missing nothing. He waited. He did not fill the silence. 7 minutes passed. Maybe 8. Paulette turned pages at a steady rhythm. She paused twice. Once at the hotel records, once at the financial account statement that Prentice had included near the back. That second pause was longer than the first. She closed the folder. "She was already going to file on you," Paulette said. She did not say it with drama. She said it the way she would state a load-bearing fact. "The financial behavior is unmistakable. I've seen this pattern many times. She's been building an exit." Darius looked at her. "For how long?" "That's what we're going to find out this morning." She picked up her desk phone and pressed a single button. "Marcus, I need a full marital financial pull. New client, Webb." She read off the case number she had already assigned, hung up, and turned back to Darius. "Tell me about joint accounts. Savings, investment, anything shared." He told her. Marcus, it turned out, was fast. By 9:45, a second folder was open on Paulette's desk, this one assembled by her team from records Darius provided access to, cross-referenced against what her financial investigator pulled through standard discovery channels. Paulette walked Darius through it item by item, her voice level and precise. The joint savings account first. 14 months of withdrawals. Small ones, never more than $800 at a time, sometimes as little as $200. each one individually forgettable. Together they added up to something Paulette wrote on a notepad and slid across the desk without comment. Darius looked at the number. He did not react. He slid the notepad back. The investment account next. It had been liquidated, not all at once, which would have been obvious, but over 6 months in incremental sell-offs. The proceeds had been routed through 3 separate transfers, each one structured to resemble normal household spending variants. The destination was a personal account in Adrienne's name alone, opened 14 months ago. She had help with the structure, Paulette said. This is not something a person designs on their own. Someone walked her through the routing to keep each transaction below the threshold that triggers automatic notice. She paused. Someone who has done this before. Darius thought about Porter Langley's name on the folder Prentice had assembled. The real estate developer. The man who photographed well. The man who had made Adrienne laugh at a farmer's market on a Sunday morning. She wasn't just leaving, Darius said. No, Paulette said. She was leaving funded. The plan was to land with liquid assets already in place before you had any reason to look. She closed the second folder. She intended to file first. She was close. Another 60 days, maybe 90, and she would have been in a significantly stronger position. The office was quiet for a moment. I want to file this morning, Darius said. Paulette nodded once, as if she had expected exactly this. I'll have it ready by 11. She picked up her pen. She'll be served today. Where does she work? Darius told her the address. The marketing firm in downtown D.C., the building with the glass atrium lobby, and the open floor plan where Adrienne had her own office with her name on a placard she'd sent him a photo of the day it went up. Look, she'd texted. I finally made it. He had texted back a congratulations he meant. That was 2 years ago. Paulette wrote it down. She'll have colleagues present. I know, Darius said. Paulette looked at him for a brief moment, not with judgment, and not with surprise. She simply looked at him the way you look at someone when you understand exactly what they are asking for and why. Then we'll make sure the service is handled by 2 o'clock, she said. He was reviewing drainage load calculations for the Greenbelt project when his phone buzzed at 2:17. A text from a number he didn't recognize, a process server confirming delivery. He looked at it for 3 seconds. He put the phone face down on his desk and finished the calculation. Adrienne came through the front door at 6:52. He heard it before he saw it. The particular way she shut the door, not a slam, but close to one, the sound of someone who had been holding something in for the duration of a 40-minute drive and was done holding it. He was sitting in the living room. The folder was on the coffee table in front of him. He had not turned on the television. She came around the corner and stopped when she saw him. Her face was composed, but barely. She had done her makeup that morning the way she always did, carefully, professionally, and most of it was still in place except around her eyes, where the day had gotten to her. She set her bag down on the chair by the door. She looked at the folder on the table. You had me served, she said. At my office. Yes, he said. In front of... She stopped. She pressed her lips together. There were people there, Darius. I know, he said. That was all he said. She moved into the room. She sat in the chair across from him. Not close, not the couch beside him. The chair across the room that she always chose, the one with more distance in it. She looked at the folder again. She said, When did you... How long have you... A while, he said. She looked at him. Something moved through her face that might have been genuine fear, or might have been the beginning of recalculation. It was difficult to tell with Adrienne, and Darius had long stopped trying. She looked at the folder again. I want to talk about this, she said. I think we should talk about this before either of us does anything we can't take back. He did not say anything. We've been together for 12 years. Her voice had settled into something more controlled now. She was finding her footing. That means something. It should mean something. Even now. "Whatever you think you know, I don't think anything," he said. "I know." She went still. He did not elaborate. He did not move toward the folder. He simply let the two words sit in the space between them and waited. She looked at him for a long moment. He watched something travel through her face, the shock giving way to something harder, a kind of resolve she was pulling up from somewhere below the surface. She stood. She walked to the kitchen counter where he had placed the divorce papers that morning, flat and paper-clipped, and clearly visible next to the fruit bowl. She picked them up. She looked at the first page. She did not turn past it. She reached into her purse. She pulled out a pen. She uncapped it. She signed. She set the pen down. She looked at the papers for a moment, and then she laughed, quiet and private. The laugh of a woman settling something in her own mind, a woman who had already decided how this story ended and found the current scene almost beneath her. She looked across the kitchen at him. Her chin was up. "You think you're making some kind of power move." She picked up her keys from the counter. "Baby, you just did me a favor." She took her purse. She walked to the door. She did not look back. The door closed behind her. The house went quiet. Darius sat still for a moment in that quiet. He listened to the sound of her car starting in the driveway, the sound of it backing out, the sound of it disappearing down the street. Then he stood. He walked to the kitchen counter. He picked up the signed papers and looked at them. Her signature clear and unhesitating across the line, the date printed at the top of the page. He placed them inside the documentation folder. He closed it. He picked up his phone and called Paulette. "She signed," he said when she answered. "Good," Paulette said. "Tonight," he said. "At the house." "I'll note the date," Paulette said. "Thank you." He ended the call. He set the folder down on the coffee table. He stood in the quiet kitchen for a moment, the fruit bowl beside him, the pen she had left behind still uncapped on the counter. He picked it up and capped it and set it down again. Then he went to wash his hands. The knock came at 9:14 on a Wednesday morning. Darius had taken a personal day. Not because he was falling apart, he wasn't, but because there were practical things to handle. The joint accounts needed to be formally separated. He had a call with Paulette at 11. He had been sitting at the kitchen table since 7 with a mug of coffee, and the kind of focused quiet that felt, for the first time in a long time, entirely his own. He set the mug down and went to the door. The woman standing on his front step was somewhere in her late 50s. She was dressed the way people dress when they understand that how they arrive matters. A charcoal blazer, pressed slacks, low heels that were sensible without being careless. Her natural hair was close-cropped and silver. She carried a structured leather briefcase in one hand, and in the other, held between two fingers with a practiced precision, was a business card. She did not smile. She did not apologize for arriving unannounced. She simply extended the card and waited. He took it. Margaret Osei, ESQ. Osei, Drummond and Associates, Estate and Succession Law, Raleigh, North Carolina. He looked at the card for a moment. Then he looked at her. "Mr. Webb," she said, "my name is Margaret Osei. I've been attempting to locate you for 11 weeks. I apologize for arriving without prior notice, but our previous efforts to reach you by mail and phone were unsuccessful." She paused. "I represent an estate. May I come in?" He put a fresh mug of coffee in front of her that she did not touch. She set the briefcase on the floor beside her chair and folded her hands on the table. She looked at him the way a person looks at someone when they are measuring not just who they are, but what they are capable of receiving. "Are you familiar with the name Cornelius Andrew Webb?" she asked. Darius turned the name over. His father's side of the family had been a silence his whole life. Not a painful one, just an empty one, the way a room feels when you've never had furniture in it. His father had died when Darius was 4. A construction accident. A framing crew on a job site in Baltimore County on a Tuesday morning in October. There had been no relationship with the paternal side after that. No aunts, no uncles, no grandparents, just his mother and, later, Felicia. Just the two of them making it work. "No," he said. Margaret nodded, as though this was exactly the answer she had expected. She reached down and opened the briefcase. "Cornelius Andrew Webb was your paternal grandfather," she said. "He passed away 6 weeks ago in Raleigh, North Carolina. He was 88 years old." She placed a folder on the table, but did not open it yet. "He was also the founder and principal owner of Webb Industrial Holdings, a privately held infrastructure and commercial real estate company he built over 50 years of continuous operation. At the time of his death, the company had active operations across 7 states. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, a car passed on the street. He had one son," Margaret continued. Her voice was measured and careful, the way a person's voice gets when they are carrying something heavy and have learned not to drop it. "Your father. There was a family estrangement, a disagreement that was never resolved. Your father left North Carolina, altered his documented surname through a series of personal and administrative filings, moved north, and built a separate life." She paused. "He died before Cornelius was able to find him." Darius was still. He was looking at the closed folder on the table. "Cornelius spent the last decade of his life trying to locate his grandson," Margaret said. "That is you, Mr. Webb. That search required my firm to work backward through birth records, municipal employment filings, and professional licensing databases. Your father's name alteration and the estrangement created significant gaps in the documentation trail. It took 11 weeks of legal work to produce your front door." Something moved briefly across her face. Not quite grief, but close to it. "He updated his estate documents when we found you, approximately 4 months before he died. He passed away before I could arrange contact." She opened the folder. She turned it so it faced him and placed it on the table between them. He looked down at it. The document was formal and dense with legal language, but the structure of it was clear. Property holdings listed by state, subsidiary company valuations, liquid asset summaries. He read it slowly, the way he read everything, from top to bottom, missing nothing. He found the number near the bottom of the first page. He did not make a sound. "After federal and state tax obligations, appraised real property, liquid assets, and equity stakes across 4 subsidiary operating companies," Margaret said, "the estate has a verified net value of $512 million. She let that sit for a moment. "You are the sole named heir. The estate is uncontested. There are no other claimants. The transfer process has already been initiated and will finalize in approximately 90 days, pending standard probate completion." The refrigerator hummed. A bird moved through the yard outside the window. Darius sat with it. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he reached across the table without a word and picked up the documentation folder that had been sitting at the corner of the table since he'd brought it downstairs that morning. He opened it. He looked at Adrian's signature, clear and unhesitating across the bottom of the page, the date printed in clean type just above it. He looked at the date. He looked at Margaret. "The date of separation in the divorce filing," he said. His voice was even, quiet. The voice of a man asking a question he needs, answered precisely. "Does that have any legal relationship to the estate? To the marriage?" Margaret looked at him. She had been doing this work for 30 years. She recognized, in the way his eyes moved between the folder and her face, exactly what she was looking at. An inheritance received after the legal date of separation is classified as the separate property of the recipient's spouse under Maryland law, she said. Your date of separation precedes the estate transfer by more than 90 days. Your estranged wife has no legal claim to any portion of this estate. She did not look away from him. Not a dollar. Darius closed the documentation folder. He set it down on the table. He was quiet for a moment. "She signed 5 days ago," he said. "She laughed when she signed." Margaret looked at him steadily. She did not offer comfort. She did not fill the silence with anything unnecessary. "Then she made her decision," she said. The alarm went off at 5:45. Darius was already awake. He lay still for a moment, looking at the ceiling of the bedroom that was now entirely his. No perfume on the air, no sounds from the bathroom, just the quiet hum of the house settling around him, and the gray light coming in at the edges of the curtains. He got up. He showered. He made coffee. He put on his work clothes. By 7:15, he was on the highway heading north toward the firm. Jerome was at his desk when Darius came through the door. He looked up the way he always did, not with a question, just with attention, taking in whatever information the heir offered before deciding whether to speak. He had been doing that since the army. He did it the same way now. Darius set his bag down at his own desk. He crossed the room and stood in the doorway of Jerome's office. "Something significant happened yesterday," Darius said. "I can't tell you the details yet. What I need from you right now is complete discretion. Not a question, not a word to anyone." Jerome looked at him for exactly 2 seconds. "Done," he said. Darius nodded and went back to his desk. Jerome did not ask a single thing. That was why Darius trusted him. The day passed the way workdays do when your mind is carrying something heavier than the work in front of you. Steadily, with effort, one task completing and the next beginning. The ordinary rhythm of it almost useful in its demands. He reviewed load calculations on the bridge project. He responded to 3 contractor emails. He ate lunch at his desk. That evening, back at the house, he made 2 calls. The first was to Paulette. "Nothing about the estate leaves this office," he said. "Not to opposing counsel, not in any filing, not in conversation. I need it sealed on your end until I say otherwise." Paulette was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the particular flatness of a professional who has just confirmed something she already suspected. "Understood. That's a sound decision." A pause. "There's nothing in the current discovery scope that requires disclosure. The timing works in your favor." "I know," Darius said. "That's why I'm protecting it." The second call was to Margaret. She answered on the second ring. "The same instruction applies to your firm," he said. "Nothing public-facing. Nothing that creates a traceable signal. I understand some filings are unavoidable, but I want them as quiet as the process allows." "I anticipated that," Margaret said. "I've already flagged the estate file for restricted disclosure protocol. We'll keep the LLC formations and the property transfer documents at the minimum required for probate without flagging the full asset picture." A pause. "You should know that some of the real estate and corporate filings will eventually appear in public business registry. That's unavoidable. But the timeline you're working with gives you a meaningful window." "That window is all I need," Darius said. He thanked her and ended the call. He sat at the kitchen table in the quiet of the house and allowed himself exactly 1 minute of stillness. Then he opened his laptop. Paulette's discovery process was still moving forward, and what it kept turning up was worse than what it had already found. Porter Langley had not simply been Adrian's affair partner, he had been her architect. It was Porter who had connected Adrian with the financial advisor, a man Porter had used before in similar situations, someone who understood how to make systematic asset removal look like ordinary household variants. The structured withdrawals, the 6-month liquidation of the joint investment account, the routing pattern that was designed to arrive below any threshold that might trigger a second look. None of that came from Adrian alone. It was engineered, and Porter had provided the engineer. He had also provided the narrative. Over 22 months, he had fed Adrian a specific and deliberate story about Darius, that a municipal infrastructure engineer had a hard ceiling, that the trajectory was flat, that the longer she stayed, the more she was simply paying an opportunity cost on a life she deserved to be living already. He had said it in ways that were never cruel. Porter was never crude in his framing, but in ways that were consistent. And repetition is its own form of persuasion. By the time Adrienne signed those papers, she had heard a version of that story so many times it had become her own conclusion. What made it darker was what Paulette's team surfaced about Porter's professional history, with Darius's firm specifically. Porter's development company had submitted bids on 2 municipal infrastructure contracts that Darius's firm managed the technical specifications for. Both bids had been rejected on merit. The technical deficiencies were documented clearly in the evaluation records. Porter had not taken those rejections as professional feedback. He had taken them as obstruction. He had spent years quietly nursing a contempt for the exact institutional space that Darius occupied. He had decided, without ever meeting him, that Darius Webb was the kind of man who blocked better men from getting where they deserved to go. He had spent 2 years convincing Adrienne of the same thing. Darius read all of it. He made no comment. He added it to the documentation folder with the same methodical care he applied to everything. 3 days after Margaret's visit, Carol Prentice sent a final file. Darius had not asked for it. Prentice included a brief note. "I felt professionally obligated to include this. It was in the background records, and I believe it's relevant to your complete picture." The file documented a pattern. 3 years prior, Porter Langley had conducted an 18-month relationship with a woman in Prince George's County who was mid-divorce at the time. The relationship had followed the same architecture: the attention, the promises, the positioning of himself as the alternative to a life she deserved to leave. When her divorce finalized, and the financial realities of it proved more limited than anticipated, Porter's presence began to diminish in small ways that added up quickly. Within 4 months of her final settlement, he had moved on entirely, with the practiced smoothness of a man who had rehearsed the exit. The woman was left with a closed marriage, a modest settlement, and none of the future she had been promised. Adrienne was not Porter's destination. She was his current project, and at some point, probably soon, probably tied to a moment when her financial and professional utility reached its limit, the project would simply close. Darius sent Prentice a bonus payment that afternoon. He did not call Adrienne. He did not warn her. She was not his to protect anymore. He filed the report in the documentation folder and closed it. That evening he sat at the kitchen table and opened a different folder entirely. Margaret had sent the formation documents for review. Darius had spent 2 evenings reading through them, working from the summary packet her wealth management team had prepared, asking the kind of questions that made the advisors sit up slightly straighter in their chairs during the call. He picked up a pen. At the top of the entity formation document, in the line marked Registered Business Name, he wrote 2 words: Cornerstone Web Holdings. It carried his grandfather's name and his own profession in the same breath. He signed the document at the bottom of the page. Then he signed the 3 others. He stacked them neatly, slid them into the return envelope Margaret had included, and set it beside his bag for the morning. He sat back. He pulled up the Web Industrial Holdings operational summary that Margaret's team had compiled for him. A full inventory of the subsidiary companies, the property portfolio, the active contracts, and the proposals that had gone dormant when Cornelius became too ill to shepherd them forward. One entry stopped him: a municipal infrastructure partnership proposal, submitted to the same regional authority that Darius's firm contracted with. For the same category of public works projects Darius had spent 14 years building specifications for. The proposal had been technically solid. It had cleared the initial review stage. It had stalled only because Cornelius had become too ill to maintain active engagement, and without someone at the helm, it had simply sat in a procurement file, technically alive, waiting for someone to pick it up. Darius read the proposal from beginning to end. twice. He understood every line of it, not just legally and financially, structurally. He understood it the way he understood load-bearing systems, the way he understood where the weight was distributed and where the capacity remained. He closed the file. He found the contact information for the authority's procurement office. He opened a new email, typed a subject line, Web Industrial Holdings Partnership Proposal, request to resume discussion, and began to write. The restaurant Adrienne chose was bright and airy, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and a menu printed on thick cardstock. She arrived first, which she always did when she wanted to control the energy of a room before someone else walked into it. She ordered sparkling water and sat with her back to the wall and her eyes on the door. Gloria came in 12 minutes late, slightly breathless, her good coat buttoned wrong at the top. Adrienne noticed, but said nothing. She stood to hug her mother, and then sat back down and smoothed the napkin across her lap. "You look good," Gloria said, settling into her chair. "I feel good," Adrienne said. And she meant it. Over the first course, she described the rental apartment as temporary but chic, a furnished place in Bethesda, with tall windows and a building gym she had already used 4 times. She said it in the tone of a woman who had upgraded, not retreated. Gloria listened and nodded and asked questions in the careful way she always had with Adrienne, soft and interested and never pressing too hard. "And the divorce?" Gloria asked. Adrienne reached for her water glass. "Moving forward. Paulette is aggressive, but she's working with what she has." She paused. "Which isn't much." She said it the way she said most things about Darius now, lightly, with a faint undertone of pity. "He'll land on his feet," she told her mother. "He's good at making do. He was always more comfortable operating small, keeping his head down, collecting his salary." She said it without cruelty, which made it worse. She genuinely believed it. "Porter mentioned a property in McLean," she said. "A development he's been sitting on. He's thinking it's the right time." She lifted her fork. "The right time for a lot of things." Gloria smiled the way she always smiled when Adrienne talked about the future. Warm and unquestioning, a mirror held up at exactly the right angle. Her attorney called that afternoon. Adrienne was walking back to her car when the call came through. She stood in the parking garage and listened, her free hand resting on the roof of the car. The asset clawback was substantial. Paulette's team had documented every transfer, every withdrawal, every routing decision that Adrienne's financial advisor had structured over 14 months. The legal recovery process was well underway. The amount Adrienne had actually secured, the number she had quietly built her exit calculations around, was going to be significantly reduced. "How significantly?" Adrienne asked. Her attorney told her. She was quiet for a moment. The parking garage hummed around her. The settlement terms were also a problem. Paulette's proposals were methodical and suffocating, countering every argument Adrienne's side had prepared. The equitable contribution claim, the argument that Adrienne's income and support during Darius's early licensure years entitled her to a share of his professional development, had been met with documentation so thorough that Adrienne's attorney had described it privately in an email, which Adrienne had read 3 times, as leaving very little room to maneuver. Then there was work. She had known about the HR complaint for weeks. A direct report had filed it internally before the divorce was ever served. A formal written grievance, citing documented conduct over 8 months. Adrienne had managed that situation the way she managed most inconveniences. She assessed the threat, decided it was containable, and moved her attention elsewhere. She had been wrong about the containment. The investigation had escalated. A formal disciplinary finding had been issued that morning. Her attorney mentioned it near the end of the call, matter-of-factly, the way you mention something you expect someone already knows about. Adrienne said she had it under control. She got in the car and sat there for a while without starting the engine. Porter had been different lately. She had noticed it in small ways first. A text returned faster than usual. A dinner invitation extended when she hadn't expected one. A quality of attention in conversation that felt deliberate in a way it hadn't before. He was warmer, more present. He asked about her week with the kind of focus that made her feel, briefly, like she was the only concern in his mind. It should have reassured her. It didn't. She knew Porter well enough by now to understand the texture of his attention, the difference between warmth that was given freely and warmth that was being deployed. This felt like the second kind, like something had shifted in his calculation, and the warmth was a response to that shift, rather than a feeling in its own right. She didn't know what had shifted. She had no information that explained it. And the absence of an explanation was its own unsettling thing. Sitting at the edge of her thoughts, the way a sound sits at the edge of a quiet room, not loud enough to name but impossible to fully ignore. She brought it up once, lightly, framing it as a joke. "You've been very attentive lately." He smiled and said he was just happy. It was a smooth answer. It arrived too quickly. She let it go. She did not forget it. That evening she called her attorney and asked to schedule a direct meeting with Darius. "I advise against it," her attorney said. "I know," Adrienne said. "Schedule it anyway." There was a pause on the other end. Then, "I'll reach out to Paulette Rivers's office in the morning." "Good," Adrienne said. "I'll handle this myself." She set her phone down and looked out the tall windows of the Bethesda apartment at the city going dark below her. She was still confident. She was. But the confidence had shifted in texture over the past few hours, less like open ground and more like something she was holding carefully with both hands, making sure not to let it tip. The house looked the same from the outside. That was the first thing Adrienne noticed as she pulled into the driveway. Same brick, same front steps, same maple tree at the corner of the yard that had dropped half its leaves onto the walkway. She had expected it to look different somehow. Smaller, maybe. The way places shrink when you stop living in them. It didn't look smaller. It looked exactly like what it was. Gloria reached for the door handle before the car was fully in park. Adrienne had tried twice to talk her out of coming. Gloria had listened politely to both attempts, and then shown up at the Bethesda apartment that morning in her good coat, buttoned correctly this time, ready to go. "You don't have to say anything," Adrienne had told her in the car. "Just be there." Gloria had nodded and looked out the window at the passing road. Darius opened the door before they knocked. He was dressed simply. Dark slacks, a gray-collared shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow. No tie. He looked rested. He looked, Adrienne thought, annoyingly composed. He stepped back from the door and let them in without ceremony, nodding at Gloria with the same quiet courtesy he had always shown her. The living room was tidy. A single closed folder sat on the coffee table. Darius sat across from the couch, in the chair that had always been his. He gestured toward the couch without words. They sat. Gloria folded her hands in her lap and positioned herself at the far end, near the corner, like a woman trying to take up as little space as possible. Adrienne set her bag down and looked at Darius across the table. She began the way she had practiced, evenly, warmly, with the measured confidence of a woman who had spent 20 years learning how to walk into difficult rooms and make them move in her direction. 12 years, she said. Whatever had gone wrong between them, there was still 12 years of shared history in this room, and she genuinely believed, that two intelligent adults could arrive at something fairer than what the attorneys were currently constructing. She talked about perspective, about proportion, about the fact that both of them had contributed to the life they had built, and that both of them deserved to walk away from it with dignity. She was good at it. She always had been. Her voice stayed level. Her hands stayed still. Darius let her finish. He did not shift in his seat. He did not look away. He simply waited until the last word was out, and the room went quiet. Then he leaned forward, and opened the folder. He didn't slide it toward her. He reached in and removed a single piece of paper and placed it flat on the table between them. The restaurant receipt. 3 weeks before you were supposedly in Annapolis, he said. His voice was even, not cold, just precise. 2 glasses of the same wine, a shared dessert, a Friday night. Adrian looked at the receipt. She said nothing. He reached in again. He set down hotel records, printed sheets, dates and locations, a name on the account that was hers. He set down parking garage photographs. He set them down one at a time, without rushing, the way a man lays out the components of a project he has had time to organize properly. Then he placed the last photograph on the table. A Sunday farmer's market, bright light. Adrian's hand in Porter's hand, both of them laughing at something, fully relaxed, fully present, looking exactly like a couple who had nowhere else to be. Adrian stared at it. 22 months, Darius said. That's what the documentation covers. There's more in the folder. He let the photograph sit there. Then he moved to the financial records. He named the accounts, the joint savings, the investment account, the private personal account she had opened independently. He described the withdrawal pattern in the same tone he might use to describe load distribution on a bridge. Factual, detailed, without visible emotion. He named the amounts. He named the dates. He described how the transfers had been structured, who had helped structure them, and what the legal recovery process had already confirmed. $190,000 is being recovered, he said. Your attorney has the filings. Gloria had gone very still in the corner. He paused for a moment. Then he spoke about Porter, not with anger, but with the same deliberate clarity he had used for everything else. He described the previous woman, the 18 months, the pattern that Prentice had documented. He said plainly that he was not telling her this to hurt her. He was telling her because she had made decisions without complete information, and she deserved to have it now. Adrienne's jaw had tightened. Her hands, folded on her knee, were pressing against each other. He reached into the folder one final time. He removed a document, clean, formal, dense with figures and legal language, and placed it on the table in front of her. My grandfather's name was Cornelius Andrew Webb, he said. He spent 50 years building Webb Industrial Holdings from a single construction contract into a privately held infrastructure empire across 7 states. He had one son. His son moved north, changed his name, and died when his son was 4 years old. He paused. Cornelius spent the last 10 years of his life trying to find me. He updated his estate documents when the law firm located me. He passed away before he could make contact. Adrienne's eyes had moved to the document. They moved across it slowly. Then they stopped. She had found the number. $512 million, Darius said quietly. The inheritance is mine alone. Every dollar of it. Because the date of separation, the date printed at the top of the papers you signed and laughed over in this kitchen, places this estate entirely outside our marriage under Maryland law. He paused once more. She knocked on my door 5 days after you walked out. The room was completely silent. The color left Adrienne's face the way heat leaves a room when a window is opened in winter. Steadily, completely, until what remained looked nothing like warmth. She stared at the document. She did not look up. From the corner came a soft, broken sound. Gloria was crying, not loudly. She sat with her hands still folded in her lap and wept the way a woman weeps when she is not crying about what is in front of her, but about everything she finally understands it to mean. 40 years of lunches and phone calls and gentle agreement. 40 years of holding up a mirror at exactly the right angle. Adrienne turned to look at her. "Mama," she said. Her voice had lost its shape. "Say something." Gloria shook her head once, just once, and said nothing. Darius closed the folder. He set it to the side with the same even motion he had used to open it. He looked at Adrienne across the table. Not with satisfaction, not with cruelty, not with anything that resembled the emotion she might have expected. "We're done here," he said. Adrienne stood. She picked up her bag. She did not look at the folder or the photographs or the document still sitting open on the table. She walked to the front door, opened it herself, and stepped out of the house into the pale afternoon light. She had nothing she came for. The Cornerstone office was a single rented suite on the 4th floor of a building in Silver Spring. Clean, spare, nothing on the walls yet, except a framed copy of the Webb Industrial Holdings Incorporation document that Margaret had sent over as part of the estate transfer paperwork. Darius had put it up himself on his first day in the space, not for show, just because it belonged somewhere visible. Jerome was across the table from him, a set of partnership review documents spread between them, a cup of coffee going cold at his elbow. They had been working through the municipal authority's framework language for 40 minutes. Careful, methodical, the kind of work both of them did well. Darius's phone lit up on the table between them. Jerome saw the name before Darius picked it up. His eyes moved up once, briefly, and then back down to the documents in front of him. Darius looked at the screen for 1 full second. Then he answered. "Porter." "Darius." The voice was warm, relaxed in the way that men who have spent decades selling things learn to be relaxed, easy and frictionless, like water moving around a stone. "I appreciate you picking up. I know you're a busy man these days. I have a few minutes." Porter moved through the pleasantries quickly, which was smart. He knew better than to linger there too long with a man like Darius. He transitioned into professional admiration. The Cornerstone filings, the infrastructure space, the vision it represented for the region. He said the word vision twice. He mentioned a project in Northern Virginia in a way that was meant to sound casual but wasn't. Within 3 minutes, he had arrived at the suggestion. Coffee, somewhere convenient, just to talk through what mutual opportunities might look like between two men of a certain professional caliber working in overlapping spaces. Darius listened to every word. He did not interrupt. He did not make sounds of agreement. When Porter finished, a brief silence opened up. "I want to be direct with you," Darius said, "because I think you're a man who values directness." "Absolutely," Porter said. "The partners being selected for Cornerstone's infrastructure work go through a vetting process I designed myself. It covers professional litigation history, prior contractual conduct, and personal character patterns across both business and private conduct." A pause. Not for effect. Just the natural pause of a man making sure the next sentence lands correctly. "I think you understand why I'm mentioning that." A silence on Porter's end, longer than the one before it. "I won't be taking that meeting," Darius said. He ended the call and set the phone back on the table. Jerome looked at the documents in front of him for a moment. Then he said, "He'll try through Adrienne next." Darius nodded once. "I know." Jerome picked up his coffee, found it cold, and set it back down. "Let him." Porter called Adrienne 4 days later. He did not open with warmth this time. He opened with practicality, which was its own kind of tell. He framed it carefully. Her existing connection to Darius, even given the circumstances, represented a line of communication that a reasonable man might still be open to. He said the word reasonable the way salesmen use it, to make the person on the other end feel that disagreeing would be unreasonable. He suggested that brokering an introduction could be mutually beneficial. He implied, without stating directly, that there was something in it for her if the door opened. Adrienne was standing in the kitchen of the short-term rental when he called. She stood with one hand on the counter and listened to him talk. She heard the reframing happening in real time. Their 22 months, the Sunday markets, the promises about McLean, all of it quietly reclassified and repositioned into a single transaction. She was a conduit now. A useful connection. A door with a handle he needed to reach. She thought about the photograph on Darius's table. her hand in Porter's, both of them laughing. How certain she had looked. How completely she had believed in the thing she was standing inside. She thought about the woman Darius had described. 18 months. The same practiced warmth. The same promises. The same quiet disappearance when the utility ran out. "No," she said. Porter rephrased. His voice stayed smooth. He explained the opportunity more specifically. The figures involved, the regional scope, what a connection like this could mean for someone rebuilding their professional profile. He was not asking for much, just a conversation, just a door opened a few inches. Adrienne said nothing for a moment. Then she ended the call. He tried again 20 minutes later. She watched the phone light up on the counter. She did not reach for it. It stopped. He tried once more that evening. She let it go to voicemail. She did not listen to the message. She did not answer after that. Darius submitted the formal record to the Municipal Infrastructure Authority's Ethics and Procurement Review Board on a Thursday morning. He had prepared it the same way he prepared every significant document, methodically, completely, with every supporting attachment organized and labeled in the order a reviewer would need them. Porter's business litigation history, the conduct pattern Prentice had documented, the financial advisory relationship that had helped structure the transfers from the marital accounts, the conflict of interest created by Porter's prior, failed bids on contracts connected to Darius's former firm. He submitted it through proper channels. He signed it. He filed the confirmation receipt in a folder he labeled with the date. Then he closed the folder and went back to work. The review board's finding arrived on a Tuesday. Darius was in a site meeting when Margaret sent the document to his email. He did not check his phone during the meeting. He finished the walkthrough, reviewed the load specifications with his site manager, and drove back to the Cornerstone office before he opened it. He read it once. Then he filed it. Porter Langley was designated a non-preferred vendor across the D.C. and Maryland municipal contracting corridor. The language was formal and dry, the way institutional documents always are when they are doing something permanent. Non-preferred. A bureaucratic phrase that meant, in practice, that a door had been closed, and the lock changed, and no one inside was going to answer when Porter knocked. 2 of his pending development proposals, deals he had spent 18 months cultivating, figures totaling just under $40 million, were dead. Not delayed. Not deferred. Dead. Jerome heard about the investor pullback 2 weeks later through a contact at a regional financing group. He mentioned it to Darius the same way he mentioned most things, briefly, without drama, while they were doing something else entirely. They were reviewing site drawings at the time. Darius nodded once and kept his eyes on the drawings. The 2-year business partnership dissolved quietly a month after that. No public statement, no explanation offered. Just 2 men who had been building something together deciding, each for their own reasons, that they would rather not be associated with the name anymore. By November, Porter Langley was in Atlanta. Darius learned this not because he was watching, but because he had stopped watching, and the information arrived anyway, the way things do when a situation has fully resolved itself. A mutual professional contact mentioned it in passing over lunch. Porter was starting over in a new market, building new relationships, identifying new opportunities. Darius said that was interesting and changed the subject. The divorce finalized on a gray Wednesday morning in late October. Paulette called him before noon. The settlement reflected exactly what the law required, and nothing beyond it. The $190,000 clawback was complete. The house was retained by Darius. The spousal support figure was minimal, a number Adrienne's attorney had fought for and received, and that Darius had not contested, because contesting it would have cost more in time than the figure was worth. Adrienne's equitable contribution argument, the claim that her support during his early licensure years entitled her to a portion of his professional value, had been dismissed entirely. Paulette said everything in her precise, unhurried way. When she finished, she added, "It's done." "Thank you," Darius said. He meant it fully. Adrian's marketing director position was eliminated during the resolution of the HR investigation. The company called it a restructuring. Everyone involved understood what it was. She moved into a studio apartment in Rockville in early December and began rebuilding through independent consulting work, brand strategy, marketing audits, project-based contracts she found through her professional network. The work was real. She was good at it. The foundation was just smaller than she had planned for. One morning in March, she was scrolling through a real estate newsletter and saw the listing. McLean. The property Porter had described to her in the specific, detailed way he had of making the future feel already purchased. She recognized it immediately from the address. She looked at the listing for maybe 4 seconds. Then she closed the tab. She did not mention it to her mother. She did not mention it to anyone. She made herself another cup of coffee and opened her email and got back to work. Darius sold the house in Silver Spring in the spring. He had already bought the land in Howard County the previous fall. 2 acres backing up to a tree line, a quiet road, enough space to breathe. He designed the house himself, working on evenings and weekends, the way he had once worked through his licensure exams. Every room the way he wanted it. A porch along the back that faced the trees. Not large, not a statement, just exactly right. He transitioned out of his salaried role and into the managing directorship of Cornerstone in February. Jerome was his first hire. The title was Director of Operations, and Jerome was very good at it in a way that surprised no one who had worked alongside him for more than a month. Felicia's community health practice opened in Baltimore in April, a refurbished building 2 blocks from the neighborhood where she and Darius had grown up. Darius funded it. He showed up to the opening, ate the food, and stood in the corner until Felicia told him to stop straightening the chairs and go home. He went home. The Cornerstone Municipal Infrastructure Partnership closed in June, the largest regional deal of its kind in 11 years. The first completed project was a pedestrian bridge rehabilitation in southeast Washington, a job that had stalled in procurement for 2 years before Cornerstone took the technical lead. His team finished it on schedule. On a Thursday afternoon in autumn, Darius Webb stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony with a pair of scissors in his hand and his name on the dedication placard behind him. He drove home that evening on the highway, moving with the last of the rush-hour traffic. He passed the restaurant without planning to. The sign caught his eye the way familiar things do, not with force, but with the quiet insistence of something the brain has already catalogued. The name in the same lettering, the same awning, the parking lot off to the right. He saw it. He registered it. He kept driving. The house in Howard County was dark when he pulled up, but the porch light was on. He had put it on a timer. He went inside, changed out of his suit, and put together a simple dinner. Something he had chosen, made at a counter that was entirely his. He carried his plate out to the back porch, the section he was still adding to himself, a weekend project, boards and framing he was doing by hand, because he wanted to, and because there was no deadline. His dog, a large, uncomplicated golden retriever that Felicia had laughed at him for naming something so plain, came and settled beside the chair without being invited. The tree line went dark slowly, the way it does in autumn without drama, the light just thinning until it was gone. Darius ate his dinner. He was not waiting for anything. He had already arrived. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.